Okay, people, today we're going to be doing something a little bit differently. Something a bit, more positive, I guess. Even though I'm still going to be calling some fans in this video stupid. Today is not to be your typical angry, smarks suck rant. Today, I'd like to attempt, even though I want to point out, I've never ever on this channel in any video claimed to be some expert in the realm of professional wrestling. I've always had just my opinion, and unlike many others, actual reasons to back up said opinions. And that's just what this video is. But I'd like to at least attempt to educate certain people today on a topic that I think is one of the biggest lies in professional wrestling, at least among the fandom. Now, over a month ago, we had the 20th anniversary of what many consider the greatest WrestleMania of all time, WrestleMania 17. And I still am emotionally trying to come to grips with 2001 in general, just being 20 years ago. But rather than actually face that, I'm just going to wear this red baseball cap to just mask the pain. And if none of you get the joke or the relevance of the red baseball cap, then I'm just going to assume you're way too young to get it anyway. Point is, WrestleMania 17. Everyone says that it's the end of the Attitude Era, when it absolutely was not. Now, in recent years, I think there have been, in all fairness, a lot of people who have come to finally realize how load of shit that big lie is that WrestleMania 17 was the end of the Attitude Era. But it is still a very commonly held belief. I still see it all the time in like comment sections or like videos titled, WrestleMania 17, where the Attitude Era ended. The Austin's heel turn that ended the Attitude Era. Excuse me. And, at the risk of sounding a bit pompous and arrogant, seeing as how not only is this channel extremely small, not a lot of people care about it, and I don't even put that much effort into it to begin with, just because I want to and I have the time, again, I feel the need to attempt to educate some people on this. Because I think it's a lie that really needs to stop being perpetuated. WrestleMania 17 was not the end of the Attitude Era. And before I really get on with that, I want to just lay something out there so you kind of understand my viewpoint and where a lot of the points I'm going to make are coming from. Now, to me, this video might become obsolete one day, because just for the hell of it, I plan on making a video one day about where I definitively think each era, like the Hogan era, the New Generation era, the Attitude Era, the Ruthless Aggression era, the PG era, and all that began and ended. Fucking easy for me to say, where each era began and ended, and obviously, like I just said, I'm going to talk about the Attitude Era come that video, but I think this one alone specifically warrants its own video. Now, again, to understand where I'm coming from and to sort of understand the points I'm trying to make, I am one of those people that are under the assumption, or not assumption, just, I'm just one of those people that believes that the Attitude Era started when Monday Night Raw became Raw is War, when it became the War Zone in, March of 1997. That seems to be the second most commonly believed theory, I guess. Most people say, the most common place people say the Attitude Era started is, the Montreal Screwjob. There were some people years ago, I think people have finally just given up on this theory, that tried to say, it was King of the Ring 1996, when Austin cut the 316 promo. No, it was not. There were shades of the Attitude Era beginning there, but that was clearly still the New Generation Era. And there's, two people online that will try to say that WrestleMania 14 was the beginning of the Attitude Era. No, it fucking wasn't. The show really did not change that much, pre-WrestleMania 14, post-WrestleMania 14. Yes, the night after WrestleMania 14, there were a lot of big significant changes, but the show itself, the overall show, still was presented the same way. Still a lot of the same characters. It still, was, for lack of a better term, the same, edgy product. And that's the thing I want to point out when talking about the end of the Attitude Era, or, why I believe the Attitude Era began when Monday Night Raw became the War Zone versus, at the Montreal Screwjob, because, when Raw became Raw's War, immediately after that, there were so many big, significant changes following that, and just one of them happened to be the Montreal Screwjob. So now to the actual topic at hand. I've beat around the bush enough. The Attitude Era and when it really ended. So to help me on this, I'm gonna use my handy dandy big ass whiteboard here that I don't have any way of actually having it stick to the wall here. I should have, I guess, planned this video out better. But I have laid out here all of the major significant changes post WrestleMania 17 versus when the Attitude Era pretty much really ended a year later around WrestleMania 18. Okay? Now, here's the thing. Before I start going into these specific reasons, let me just lay out the obvious in case there's like two people that don't know this. The big reasons everyone says WrestleMania 17 was the end of the Attitude Era is because, well, the Monday Night Wars ended, no more WCW, and then eventually no more ECW, and Austin turned heel and joined McMahon. And that's it. Here's the thing, though. I understand the Monday Night Wars and the Attitude Era are very synonymous with one another. People, they go very hand in hand, yes. But they are not the same thing. The Monday Night Wars started before the Attitude Era. No matter where you think the Attitude Era started, especially if you're one of the people that thinks it's the two logical points, again, that being Raw becoming Raw's War or the Montreal Screwjob, the Monday Night Wars were a thing before the Attitude Era. They became a thing in, September of 95 when WCW debuted Monday Nitro. And if you're one of those people that thinks, well, that's when that's when they debuted Nitro, but that's not really when the war began. The war began in '96 when the Outsiders, Hall and Nash came in and formed the NWO with Hogan. Okay, that is still before the Attitude Era began. Okay, like I just said, everyone here, with the exception of maybe like 5 people who are out of their mind, can agree the Attitude Era in some way, shape, or form began in 1997. Even if you believe that the Monday Night Wars truly didn't begin until the Outsiders came to WCW, well, that didn't happen until, mid-96, like June or something? So, that's still before the Attitude Era. The point is, the point I'm trying to make here, or that I'm going to eventually make, is that when the Monday Night Wars ended in March of 2001, the show all of a sudden didn't just stop being the Attitude Era. The show didn't all of a sudden just stop having the same type of characters, booking, the same type of crash TV elements. It was still the same for the following year. It didn't just all of a sudden stop. And again, the Monday Night Wars ended the Raw before WrestleMania 17. So if you think that, just the Monday Night Wars caused the end of the Attitude Era, well then WrestleMania 17 isn't part of the Attitude Era either then. It ended come that Raw, but no one's going to sit here and say that WrestleMania 17 was, a Ruthless Aggression era show. And that's the thing. Are you really going to look at the post WrestleMania 17 Raw with the same look and feel, Stone Cold and The Rock being in the main event for the WWF title? Are you really going to look at that and be like, yeah, that's a Ruthless Aggression era show? No! Everything pretty much was the same afterwards. Yeah, Austin was a heel and aligned with McMahon, but the top guys in the company were still Austin, McMahon, Rock, Kane, Undertaker, Triple H. The thing is, yeah, the WCW being out of business was a big deal. But that really has nothing to do with the actual on-screen product. And the on-screen product was still the same. Same main event scene, same mid-card, the hardcore division, the tag division, the women's division, hell, even the light heavyweight division. All of that basically still remained the same. The only difference was now Stone Cold, who was still the top guy in the company, was a heel now instead of a babyface. And even then, some people might try to say, well, ECW was gone too. Okay, ECW declared bankruptcy, if I recall, on April the 4th, 2001. So 3 days after WrestleMania 17. So when the first Raw post WrestleMania 17 happened, when Austin and Triple H formed the two-man power trip, ECW was still officially, though, was a thing. So again, how could, if ECW going out of business is a major significant reason as to why the Attitude Era ended, well then, it was still in business technically following, the following few days after WrestleMania 17. So how could WrestleMania 17 be the end? I know it sounds like I'm kind of just beating around the bush, but again, I get paranoid about not getting it, like always forgetting one or two minor details. So I'm sorry, try to bear with me. But so the point I'm trying to make here is hardly anything changed. And now with my visual aid here, I will show that. So post WrestleMania 17, what really changed besides Austin being a heel? Like I said before, everything else was pretty much the same. The tag division, the hardcore division, the women's division. Really, what was, it was the same crash TV filled show. What changed? Well, if you can't see, which again, I think my camera might be a little too far, but whatever. Honestly, the first major change in the short term of WrestleMania 17 was China leaving. Oh, and if you can see, that's how I have this laid out. Major changes are in red. Minor changes are the ones in black here. Okay, so the first major thing that happened, like first major change of significance post WrestleMania 17, of all things, was China leaving about a month later. Now, despite certain things I'm going to say that might kind of undermine this, why am I putting this in the major section? Well, because despite what some people today, especially desperate Becky Lynch simps, who are going to try to say that Becky Lynch is one of the biggest or most well-known women wrestlers in the company's history, let alone wrestling, China was one of the biggest and most recognizable faces of the Attitude Era. Despite, again, like what some people will try to downplay that. That's true. I may have been a little kid at the time, but I knew a lot of people who were not super huge big wrestling fans, but who knew about China. Okay, pretty much everyone back then knew about her. Okay, she was one of the major iconic stars of the era. I'm not trying to say she's on the level of like Austin or Rock, but she's definitely one of the people you think of when you think the Attitude Era. Okay? So that being said, her leaving like a month later, what was it? She left after Judgment Day, which would have been the May pay-per-view. Her leaving a little over a month later was the first major change. Ooh. I know I just called her one of the biggest and most recognizable names of the Attitude Era, but ooh, China leaving. Ooh, big, really not the Attitude Era anymore, right? Huh? See? No. Okay? The next major change, it basically comes in the form of the Invasion storyline, and that is basically involves the influx of WCW and ECW wrestlers. And a lot of people who would become basically well-known in the WWE, but aren't really associated with the Attitude Era, guys like Booker T or Rob Van Dam. And again, this is a major thing that shows things were changing. But again, that shows things are changing, not that things have completely changed. I like to look at WrestleMania 17 as the beginning of the end. So, we've got China leaving and the whole Invasion storyline and the influx of WCW and ECW wrestlers. Those are the big major changes. And then, not a lot, really. Okay, I once heard someone try to say that the Invasion pay-per-view itself was the end because this was not only where Austin turned heel again, sort of, whatever, but beforehand, McMahon was still a heel. But now, come the Invasion pay-per-view, Austin is a heel, but McMahon is a babyface. That's an interesting way to look at it, but the reason I'm not adding that, or the reason why I don't even have, Austin joins McMahon on the list here of major changes, I'll get to in a little bit, once we get to the point, let's just say past the Invasion. But on another side note, I personally like to believe the reason some people don't like to acknowledge the rest of 2001, like the latter portion of 2001 as being a part of the Attitude Era, is because they hate the Invasion storyline, and because they want, to preserve the memories of the Attitude Era. They don't want to involve, they don't want to acknowledge that this major botch of a storyline was part of the Attitude Era. Sorry guys, as someone who does love the Attitude Era, and does at least acknowledge the faults in the Invasion storyline, sorry guys, the Invasion storyline was part of the Attitude Era. Okay? The two of the biggest stars during that time still were Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. Okay? I've heard some people try to call the Invasion an era. I've actually heard this a lot. People will refer to this time period between like WrestleMania 17 and 18 as the Invasion Era. Guys, the Invasion was a 6-month storyline from like late June to June to November. It was a 6-month storyline. 6 months! That's not a fucking era! And even if you want to say, like, post-WrestleMania 17 is where the Invasion kind of began, because Shane, in storyline, was the owner of WCW. And occasionally, WCW wrestlers were popping in and making appearances or some shit. I'm going to leave that in because it's important to make people laugh in these videos, despite what a lot of nobodies in the YWC think. Anyway, the point is, even if you want to say the Invasion was started post-WrestleMania 17. Okay, what? That's like 8 months still then? All the way to when the storyline ended at Survivor Series in November? Again, that's 8 months. That's less than a year. That's not an era. Can an era even really be under a year? Even then, it doesn't matter. The Invasion was a 6-month storyline, and even if you want to believe that it started right after WrestleMania 17 or at WrestleMania 17, still, that's then like, what, 8-9 months? That's still less than a... WrestleMania was April 1st, and then it began... Fucking whatever. Whatever. The point is... the Invasion was only several months, less than a year. It was not an era. And anyone who calls the Invasion an era, anyone who says the Invasion era, is a fucking idiot. And again, is desperately just trying to deny, honestly, the fucking truth that's right in front of them. So now that that's out of the way, now for the rest of the big monumental changes post-WrestleMania 17 that apparently signified that the Attitude Era was over. SmackDown gets a new look. Yeah, SmackDown gets, a new intro, theme song, and the stage, like the iconic fist. And again, that is something noticeable. Like I said, that signifies that something's changing. But is that really all that big of a deal? Just one of the shows got a new look? Keep on, just one. Just SmackDown, not even Raw. Only SmackDown. And again, it got a new stage, a new logo. Big deal. That's why I have it outlined in black. It's a noticeable change, but it's minor. Now this one's gonna need a bit more explaining, because I know some people are gonna try to say I contradict myself with this one. But here's the thing: the next one, which is also a minor change, is Raw is War going back to just being Monday Night Raw. Now again, some of you are about to be like, well, wait a minute. You're the one who just said earlier in this video, Mr. Red, that you believe the Attitude Era started when Raw became Raw is War. Yes. Here's the difference, though, about when they changed the name here versus back in 97. When they changed the name in 97, the actual show changed. It started to become, that's when the whole focus of the show started to shift over into this more Crash TV oriented, again, lack of a better term here, but like edgy programming. Okay? That's when it actually started to, the show itself started to basically kind of change format. Not be this, fucking children's cartoon, and instead just decide to be this whack, like insane, edgy Crash TV show. The name change in 2001, though, the common consensus online, from what I can see, and it makes perfect sense, is because 9/11 had happened. and they thought it would be like a little insensitive or whatnot. You know, just wouldn't feel right when the country is basically at war to sort of emphasize it, calling your show the war zone. That's why they put it back to Raw. Okay, but again, going back like what I just said repeatedly throughout earlier in this video, nothing actually changed. Look at the Raw prior to Raw becoming Raw is War in '97, and then look at when Raw became Raw is War, and then the show after that, where I believe the second episode where there was called Raw is War. That's the one where they had like Bret Hart have his meltdown and he's cutting on the promo, be like, "This is bullshit!" Like actually swearing on mic. The show actually changed between like before and after. When Raw is War just went back to being Raw in like September of 2001, again, the show was the same. Same intro, same theme song, same stage, really same logo. The logo is written in the same font. It is basically the same logo, they just chopped the words "is war" off. And you can tell they wanted to still call it Raw is War. I'm pretty sure, like, you know how like whenever someone comes out and they have the little graphic underneath them that like says their name, off to the side it may have the logo. Lots of times back then it said the War Zone off to the side. Well, once they stopped calling it the War Zone, it still said like Raw Zone. But it's basically them still like, look at it. It's like in the same font. It's basically them still wanting to call it the War Zone, but they just can't anymore. The show itself, though, was still the same before and after. Same look, same feel, same booking, same type of characters. So again, I think it's something that shows that things are changing. But again, it's a minor, and in the grand scheme of things, borderline insignificant change. And again, unlike in '97, the name change was for completely different reasons. And then we have, you know, come the end of the Invasion storyline, them unifying the WWF and WCW World Championships. Great. Again, that's a noticeable change. And again, from when the Invasion ended, from a kayfabe standpoint, now WCW and ECW were dead. Yeah, that's noticeable. That's something. But again, look, I got only 5 real significant changes here, and only 2 of them are major ones. And again, I said earlier, there's a reason why I don't even add on this list, oh, well, Austin's a heel, and he joined McMahon. You know why? Because one thing a lot of people who like to think that Austin, you know, joining McMahon signified the end of the Attitude Era. After the Invasion storyline, what was the big main event storyline they basically went back to? They immediately just went back to Austin versus McMahon. After Survivor Series 2001, after the Invasion storyline was over, it just went back to status quo. Vince was back to being the big evil guy in the company, and Austin comes out, despite the fact that the previous night he was leading the charge to kill the WWF. He comes out, and again, the status quo was back. He is the big conquering fan favorite hero that comes out and stomps the shit out of Vince McMahon. So despite joining him at WrestleMania 17, months later, it's just all of a sudden back to Austin versus McMahon. Back to the most iconic thing about the Attitude Era. So how can you people say that WrestleMania 17 was the end of the Attitude Era because Austin shook Vince McMahon's hand, when months later, it just was status quo again. Austin versus McMahon. Austin beating up McMahon. Again, is there anything more Attitude Era than that? They just went right back to it. Again, back to status quo. Because the show, fundamentally, was still the same. Throughout the Invasion storyline, the 2 top guys were Stone Cold and The Rock. Throughout the majority of that, who were the 2 world champions? They had Austin as the WWF champion and Rock as the WCW champion. Again, is there anything more Attitude Era than having your 2 top guys, your 2 world champions, be Stone Cold and The Rock? So yeah, that's all the significant changes for the WWF post-WrestleMania 17. Now I want you to look at the fucking monster of a list I have for post-WrestleMania 18. Do you see this? And do you see how many more fucking major red ones there are versus minor black ones? Now, the exact moment or whatever where the Attitude Era ended, I don't know if I want to say like it was. I tend to just say it was around WrestleMania 18 because I don't quite know if I should say it was WrestleMania 18, maybe the night after, or maybe one of the specific events I've listed here. But here's the thing: look how much changed post WrestleMania 18 versus WrestleMania 17. The night after WrestleMania 18, Brock Lesnar debuts. That is a major development because this guy, in a sense, is kind of the face of the Ruthless Aggression era. Or at least he was for like the first half. So you've got the face of the next era debuting, and remember, they pushed him immediately to like the main event spot. So it's not like you know, when like guys like Austin, Triple H, and Rock were there in like the New Generation era as mid-carders. Brock was completely pushed to the main event, and he debuted after WrestleMania 18. He was the face of the following era. Again, to me, that shows something has changed, is different. Another reason is, while you could say a lot of these characters in the grand scheme of things were kind of minor, they're still some of the most well-known characters when it comes to the Attitude Era. That is, a lot of established characters changing and then eventually months later coming back as different characters. Characters like the original Masked Kane. Shortly after WrestleMania 18, I forget why, I don't know if it was like kayfabe or real life, I think like Kane got injured or something. And then like months later he came back, but that's when he came back as kind of a more humanized Kane. He had a much different look. He had a different mask, the one with like the open mouthpiece. So Kane, a major identifiable character of the Attitude Era, completely changed. Another one, eventually Kurt Angle, the original American Boy Scout, like all-American hero Boy Scout parody Kurt Angle, the best version of Kurt Angle, by the way, eventually started to go away right around the time, you know, he got his head shaved. That was shortly after WrestleMania 18. Then he kind of started to be the more buttoned-down, serious Kurt Angle. Another one that I really don't think a lot of people think of. The billion-dollar princess Stephanie McMahon, shortly after WrestleMania 18, was gone. I think, what was it, like 2 weeks later, there was like some weird handicap match where, what was it? It was like Stephanie and Chris Jericho versus Triple H for the Undisputed title. And the stipulation was that if Triple H won, Stephanie's off TV or something. Well, Triple H won, Stephanie was off TV, and that was the end of the original bratty billion-dollar princess character of Stephanie. When she came back months later, she was kind of I guess a lot more serious would be the word, but she was, the general manager of SmackDown, was no longer the bratty, billion-dollar princess, as they commonly called her. Another change, minor one but noticeable, was the new world title design. They replaced like the round Attitude Era one. I've heard people call it the Big Eagle one. I don't know. They replaced that title belt, which is a shame because that was the best one. But the one the people associate more with like the Ruthless Aggression Era. They kind of like the one that started out as like the undisputed title. You know what I'm talking about. So they got a new world title design. Raw also gets a new look now. They also get the new logo, intro, theme song, stage. So now Raw gets a completely new makeover. Minor change, but still a noticeable important one. Now here is arguably where the Attitude Era really ends, if not at WrestleMania 18, and this is a major change. The brand split and draft. This was a major thing that signified that the times were changing, that it was a new era. And in fact, I'm pretty sure on the WWE Network, when you go to the menu for episodes of Raw, and obviously if you click on it, there's a quick little synopsis below. I'm pretty sure on the episode where they start the draft, it literally says it's the dawning of a new era. So, up here is people that still try to say WrestleMania 17 was the end. But you've got the brand split and draft, which starts the whole Raw versus SmackDown competition thing, which is one thing that the Ruthless Aggression era is really known for. Having Raw and SmackDown actually be two completely separate shows. That started here in mid-2002, post-WrestleMania 18. Now, the other point where the Attitude Era kind of really comes to a close, and I think it's a significant one, is the company's name change. And again, I had so many of these, I had to kind of organize this in a weird way. I couldn't just list them all down. But despite me writing this one off to the side here in small, it's one of the most significant ones. The company's name changed. They got sued by the World Wildlife whatever, and had to change the company's name from WWF to WWE. And just, if you really look back at that time, a lot of people really view them, there's a lot of people that really view that, like old school fans, that borderline view the WWF as, they kind of view like the WWF and WWE as like two separate companies. Because again, when they think WWF, they kind of think one time period, and then when they think WWE, they think like another. So to me, this is something that just kind of happens to fall into that, to show, again, that things were changing. I know that really this one doesn't have anything much to do with like a major creative change at the time, but it kind of was just like to me, it just kind of really symbolizes a big it just ended up in retroactively kind of symbolizing like a big change in like just in the company. Another major one, Austin and Rock begin to get phased out. This kind of goes back to also like established characters kind of like leaving or changing. But it was at this point that the two big faces of the previous era, Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, started to get phased out. Rock started to transition more into Hollywood, but he was also starting to put more people over on his way out, like Brock Lesnar. Austin, well, obviously at this point you had his when he walked out on the company, but that was also because they were, going to put over the new guy, the future Brock Lesnar, and they wanted Stone Cold to put Brock Lesnar over. Austin and Rock, now, again, beginning to get phased out, to me, really shows something is changing. Unlike post-WrestleMania 17, when the show was still all about Stone Cold and The Rock. Honestly, I just happened to have watched, like, a show recently, a really insignificant one. And there was, like, a lot of really lower mid-card guys. Even, like, insignificant ones, like the Radicals. And I just looked at that and I'm like, look at them in, like, 2001. And now, look at them 1 year prior in 2000. They may not have been, like, important, but they were still on the show regularly. But then look at guys like that a year later, in 2002. They're like, there's a lot of lower mid-card guys that are just completely off TV, barely shown anymore. So these two kind of like go hand in hand. Established characters like the original Stephanie and Kurt Angle and Kane leaving to be like changed, to be replaced by like other like newer versions of those characters, and the top guys of the company, Austin and Rock, being phased out, unlike post-WrestleMania 17 when the show still revolved around them. Here's another big one. The NWO disbands. It was sometime after the brand split and draft and the company name changed. I think like that was it. The NWO was just gone. One of the just most iconic things of the Monday Night War period, and again the Monday Night Wars, the thing that people associate with the Attitude Era so much, now was gone. Are you people really going to tell me that in like early 2002 when the NWO came in, the NWO, are you really going to look at that and be like, yeah, this was Ruthless Aggression Era? This team that is so associated with the Monday Night Wars, and again, being brought in to fight the two faces of the WWF during the Monday Night Wars, you're going to look at that and be like, oh yeah, this is Ruthless Aggression Era? Get the fuck out of here. So, no more NWO. That's gone. Hogan's a babyface. Scott Hall just leaves. Kevin Nash just tears his quad and comes back a year later. X-Pac nobody gave a fuck about. And then the people that they recruited, recruited during that time, like Booker T and Big Show, just go back to being Booker T and Big Show. Here's another one. Titles associated with the Attitude Era eventually get retired, like the European title and the Hardcore title. Come the middle of 2002, on like episodes of Raw, I think both matches involved RVD, funny enough, they ended up being unified with, I think, like the Intercontinental title, and they got retired. everyone associates the European title and the hardcore title especially with the Attitude Era. Well, it was post WrestleMania 18 finally where those were retired. Those were gone. Hell, like months later, they tried to get rid of the Intercontinental title. Again, things started to really change after WrestleMania 18, unlike WrestleMania 17. Another major one, Shawn Michaels returns. Yeah, Shawn Michaels was there for like the first year of the Attitude Era, like the 97 time frame until like WrestleMania 14. And on a side note, maybe I want to go into someday in a future video, but I'm not going to do it here. God, they really like to associate Shawn Michaels way too much with the Attitude Era when no one really does. Like, I mean, like the company for some reason, and some fans, but it's like, Shawn Michaels really is not who you think of when you think the Attitude Era. But anyway, that's beside the point. Shawn Michaels returns. Throughout the Attitude Era, he was just in non-wrestling roles, like special guest referee or commissioner or whatnot. Now, he's actually back to wrestle. Another one, speaking of debuts, Eric Bischoff shows up, and so does the World Heavyweight Championship. Now, they just straight up have 2 world titles. Unlike months prior during the Invasion, where yeah, there were 2 world champions there, but one was supposed to be, because it actually was, the world championship of another company. Now, they introduce their second world championship, the World Heavyweight Championship. And to round it all off, yes, this is a minor one, but come November, they debut the Elimination Chamber, one of the more iconic match types that was made during the Ruthless Aggression era. One of the more match types people associate with that era. They look at the heyday, the glory days of the Elimination Chamber being during the Ruthless Aggression era, from like that 2002 to I guess like 2007 time frame. See, again, look at all of these changes post WrestleMania 18, and look how many of them were major changes versus post WrestleMania 17. What, like 5 major changes, only 5 changes, 5 noticeable changes, only 2 of them really major ones. And at the risk of sounding very pompous and arrogant here, a lot of people who will say still cling to this fallacy that WrestleMania 17 was the end. It really is just comes down to a bunch of things that's their opinion. Like, oh, it just changed differently for them because of Austin's heel turn, or I don't know, just because they didn't like the Invasion storyline or something. This has nothing to even do with my opinion. Okay, this is all fact. These are actual major changes that happened post, WrestleMania 17 and 18. And to which I just, have to lay out the question now. Again, how can you say WrestleMania 17 was the end of the Attitude Era when, look, in the grand scheme of things, not that much changed. Look, but post WrestleMania 18, look at how much of a different product it was. So I hope I've gotten my point across, and I hope this lie finally dies this year. I hope this. This bullshit that WrestleMania 17, the show that ended the Attitude Era, is just over. Because, again, people who are going to cling to that, you've got nothing. What changed post-WrestleMania 17? Like I said, don't say, oh, Austin joined McMahon and he was a heel, though. Because immediately after Survivor Series, immediately after the Invasion storyline, it was back to status quo. It was back to Austin beating the shit out of McMahon every week. So, again, I know I'm going to sound very smug and arrogant here, but at this point, really, how can anyone argue that WrestleMania 17 was the end of the Attitude Era when, post-WrestleMania 18 is where it ended? I hope I've been, I know I've been a little bit of a pompous and arrogant asshole, especially to the people that call WrestleMania 17 the end of the Attitude Era. And I know I have a past of being a pompous, arrogant asshole that may, automatically make people hate me. But really, I hope I've been able to educate some people on this. I hope I've been able to actually leave kind of a positive impact for once, instead of my normal just angry shit. So, that's that. Okay, so I'm well aware that there's probably going to be some really awkward transition or jump cut. I'm probably not going to be able to do some type of smooth edit into this. and I'm adding this months later to when I initially recorded the main bulk of this video, but I need to add this because despite the fact that I forgot it, this is arguably the biggest point that makes, I don't know, the point I'm trying to make here. And yes, I'm also well aware that, from such a distance, no one could really see all the points I had written down on the whiteboard here. But, that's where it is. Everything laid out in red is the really important, big, crucial ones. Everything laid out in black are just kind of the minor ones. And again, my point, look at how many points just in general there are post WrestleMania 18, and how many of them are super big and crucial ones versus WrestleMania 17. But what is this big crucial point that I somehow forgot about that I need to, lazily edit in here? Okay, the point is, I don't understand how anyone can continue to say that WrestleMania 17 is the end of the Attitude Era when even the company has admitted that the Attitude Era ended in 2002. I understand the WWE says a lot of shit that you could poke holes in, but they have straight up, very recently in the grand scheme of things, but straight up, outright admitted that WrestleMania 17 was not the end, that it ended in 2002. Now again, the precise moment, who the hell knows? Was it WrestleMania 18? Was it after WrestleMania 18? Was it the draft / brand split? I don't know. But they have straight up, outright admitted that that the Attitude Era went into 2002. If you watch part 1 of that Ruthless Aggression Era documentary they made, I think at this point over a year now, the whole point of part 1 is going over the end of the Attitude Era into the Ruthless Aggression Era. Some of you people who aren't going to think at all are going to say that whole video is about post-WrestleMania 17 and the invasion angle. But if you're just going to see that, then you're not actually paying attention, or you just straight up didn't actually watch the video. That whole video is about the end of the Attitude Era and what led up to the Ruthless Aggression Era. I could be wrong about this. I'm pretty sure, towards the end of the video, they straight up say just, the Ruthless Aggression Era has begun or some shit. I could be wrong about that. But you look at the way they talk about it. They outright say that things, by the time it got to 2002, are where WWE started to forge a new path, a new identity. So they have straight up just said now in one of their official documentaries, and hell, there's even a Wikipedia page now that I think does give a specific date, but when the era ended, but considering a bunch of other stuff the WWE has said, when it comes to a specific date, as I said, sorry, when it comes to a specific date, they've been kind of inconsistent about that. But they are consistent in saying that it ended in 2002. Now some of you are probably going to, I don't know, try to do some bit of research to still debunk this, because for some reason wrestling fans hate being proven wrong about even the most minor thing. You should see how many people get really defensive for some reason if you question, I don't know, what was the difference between American Badass Undertaker and Big Evil Undertaker? It's the same character, just one's a nickname. People will get really defensive over minor shit that doesn't matter like that. Point is, though, I understand some people might try to do, look at this Wikipedia page as well and be like, well, Mr. Red, you're the one who said the Attitude Era started when Raw became Raw is War, but this Wikipedia page that now you're citing claims that the Attitude Era didn't start until December of 97. Here's the thing, though. WWE is a lot more consistent when saying the Attitude Era ended in 2002. They're a lot more consistent now when they say the Attitude Era ended versus when it began. WWE really is not consistent at all when saying where the Attitude Era began. They have on their Wikipedia page now, which again, probably, to be fair, isn't even officially done by someone from WWE, for all I know. But again, I'm still going to go by, it says the end is there in 2002, because many other things from WWE themselves, again, like their Ruthless Aggression Era documentary, outright say 2002 was the end. point I'm trying to make here is they're a lot more consistent on where they're saying now with the Attitude Era ended versus when it began. You know, that Wikipedia page will say that it began in December of 97. But then you'll look at clips from like DX that are like pre-Montreal Screwjob or pre-December 97. They'll show clips like Austin Stunning McMahon, which was in, what was it, like August of 97? And again, I remember one time going through Walmart, they had a DVD called Dawn of the Attitude Era, which was all about 1997. And on it, they have a list of matches, just straight up matches that they show, that are throughout the entirety of 1997. From like Bret and Sid's cage match from the episode of Raw where Bret had like his meltdown and started using profanity in a promo, to literally like Austin and Bret at WrestleMania 13, hell, even Undertaker and Sid at WrestleMania 13 I think was on there, to several other matches pre-Montreal Screwjob. So all of a sudden that's part of the, they put out a DVD and say that shit's part of the Attitude Era, but their Wikipedia says it didn't begin until December. No, see, that's why I can still confidently say, look, the WWE is outright saying the Attitude Era ended in 2002, where, you know, because they're a lot more consistent with what they say regarding that, whereas when it comes to when it began, they're not consistent at all. One minute it's the Montreal Screwjob, the next minute it's December of 97 or something, but then they count matches long prior to Montreal, so the point I'm trying to make, so to bring this all around, the point I'm trying to make here with this point, I'm going to rush here, so that's why I'm kind of being a little frantic today. The point I'm trying to make here with this point is that the company is outright saying, and literally has it said in a documentary, that the Attitude Era ended in 2002, and that's where the Ruthless Aggression Era began. So how can anyone still to this day refuse to accept that WrestleMania 17 was not the end of the Attitude Era? It doesn't matter that Austin turned heel and joined McMahon. Post-Invasion, it was right back to the status quo of Austin versus McMahon. Okay? It doesn't matter that you don't like the Invasion. Okay? I love the Attitude Era. I am a big Attitude Era fanboy. But I can acknowledge the flaws in the Invasion. And I can admit that the Invasion was part of the Attitude Era. For God's sakes, I will say it again, the two primary guys on television, the two guys holding the world titles, were still Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock. Okay? The Invasion wasn't an era. Okay? Post-WrestleMania 17, pre-WrestleMania 18 was not a fucking era. Okay? And it doesn't matter that they were in transition between there, okay? The transition period can still be is still part of the previous era. So, again, smoking gun isn't really the right word here to use. Isn't really the right word to use here, or phrase, I mean. But again, the company now is outright saying it. So if you still to this day claim that WrestleMania 17 was the end of the Attitude Era, you have nothing to back up anything you say. From literally all this bullshit to the company just straight out now, straight up, flat out, basically admitting everything I've said. They've basically proved some nobody on the internet here right. WrestleMania 17 was not the end of the Attitude Era. Post WrestleMania 18 was. I understand it's a little contradictory earlier because I'm like, was it WrestleMania 18 or was it after? Who knows? But really, when you get down to it, that period around WrestleMania 18, most likely after it, was the end, not WrestleMania 17. Okay, one last thing before I go. Now, if all you cared about when it comes to this video was, you know, what the video was actually about how WrestleMania 17 was not the end of the Attitude Era and when the Attitude Era actually ended, if that's all you cared about, then you can click off now because you will not give a damn about this. This has nothing to do with that. You can just avoid that, go home. But if you are one that's interested in what this channel is normally about, you know, the kind of drama, you know, about like, you know, smarks, horrible wrestling fans, this terrible fan base, then, you know, stick around for this because I feel the need to show this. Now, in my last video, the one about how there's no such thing as an anti-smart, and it's a made-up word, and I hate the term, and I hate the people who actually use it or even call themselves anti-smarts, I made this statement about how I had this viewpoint about how I feel about anti-smarts long before the Smart Busters made their, comeback mid last year. And I feel like I've said this before, but I feel like I mentioned the Smart Busters a lot. I'm a fan, whatever. I'm not like a super huge fan, though. But the thing is, the reason I feel the need to bring that up, possibly again, is because I understand some people probably view me as probably just some Smart Busters wannabe, which, fine, whatever. But the point is, though, in one of their comeback videos, not even their first one, the second one, I believe, where they make this, where it's about, like, why wrestling was actually killed by, smarks and anime or whatnot, instead of Triple H. That's where they actually make their stance known against anti-smarks. Like I said in my previous video, I've had this viewpoint long before them, or at least long before they made their viewpoint on anti-smarks public. In my last video, though, I didn't really have any proof, but thanks to a day where I had way too much free time on my hands and was kind of bored, I've now been able to actually find some proof. So, here's some screenshots from comment sections from videos that predate the Smart Busters return in general. Here's one. And here's another. And just to drive the point home, here's the upload date of the video where the Smart Busters first made their views known on anti-smarks. I don't know, I just felt the need to finally prove this. No one actually accused me of just hopping on this bandwagon, I guess, but just in case, again, because I had a day where I had too much free time on my hands, there you go. So, that's that. Also, before I go, one last thing. If you were paying attention to this channel, which I don't think there was only I think there was only like a handful of people who were, back in August, you may be wondering, what the hell was with that live stream of you and a bunch of other dudes watching SummerSlam 2001? Look, I know this is a very marky thing to do, although now I kind of do it more just because, 2001 was 20 years ago, and that fucks with me. It gives me an existential crisis. But been watching all the pay-per-views from 2001 on their anniversary dates, and somehow I convinced a bunch of friends who mostly are not wrestling fans. I think there was only one guy in that video who actually really was a wrestling fan. A bunch of other fans who are not wrestling fans to join me. And what do you know? They love it because this shit actually draws, shit from back then actually draws people in instead of modern day wrestling, which is fucking garbage. Again, nobody cares about vanilla midgets with no fucking character who do nothing but a bunch of flips and kicks or boring technical wrestling in the ring. But the point I'm trying to make here is I've actually convinced these non-wrestling people to watch these shows with me and to they've actually kind of become somewhat fans. Again, another reason also why casuals are more important than hardcores. But the point is, we have a lot of really wacky commentary during these wrestling shows, these pay-per-views, that kind of don't even have anything really to do with what's happening on screen, or if they do, there's something really fucking ridiculous that hardly even relates. And I thought it's really funny, and I'm like, wow, I should record this one day, just to look back on and laugh. But I didn't want to just use my phone or my camera because that shit can only hold so much data and I'd have to shut it off or whatnot. So I decided to live stream it to get it all over and done with in one recording. Whether the video stays up or not, be damned, because that's the point wasn't to actually have a video on my channel, it was to record our commentary. The video ended up being hit with a copyright strike, or claim from WWE anyway, so that video will not go back up. To anyone who did join us during that live stream, thank you. I hope you enjoyed that terrible excuse for a video. But so that's what happened, and just know that it might happen again in the future. As I'm recording this part, months after I recorded the main bulk of the primary video, I have what is it? The anniversary of No Mercy 2001 just passed, so I don't know. Maybe we'll do it for the anniversary of Survivor Series 2001. This video is probably going over 50 minutes, and it needs to stop, and I'm well aware I need to stop making videos that long. I really try, but I just have a tendency to ramble, and I'm really paranoid about missing it, about not getting every crucial point in my videos. I'm sorry. I will stop now. I will leave. So WrestleMania 7, to drive the point home one last time, WrestleMania 17 was not the end of the Attitude Era. It was WrestleMania. It was around WrestleMania 18, most likely after. Screw all of you who still say that. There's no other way, nicer way to put it. You are just idiots. There's also the proof that I had my stance on anti-smarts before the smart busters showed up, and there's also my explanation for what the hell was going on with that one live stream. Adios, people.